The 2021 draft was a very anticipated draft. There were 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15 picks. There were also 3 receivers taken in the top 10 alone, and there are several premier players from this first round 3 years into their NFL careers. In today's video, we will be going back and grading picks 17 through 32 in reverse order, and in a video that will be released next week, we will be grading picks 1 through 16, that way you can watch the picks in order. We will be starting today's video with the Bucs selection of pass rusher Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and finishing with the Raiders selection of offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood. We all know why we're here, so let's dive right in. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka was the 3rd straight pass rusher taken, and I liked this pick a lot when it was made. I thought Joe was entering a very favorable situation for him to personally succeed in, and thought there was a chance he could have 7 or 8 sacks per year, not just as a rookie, but every year. I love the Bucs defense heading into 2021, and for Joe, having an opportunity to learn from Shaq Barrett, along with having a pretty big boy on the interior by the name of Vita Vea, to take up pass blockers meant he was going to have a lot of one-on-one opportunities, and his opportunity entering the league was better than most. He had a very favorable draft profile coming out of Washington, but the production in either pressures or sacks was never there. In 3 years, he has just 13 sacks in 2 seasons with 35 or less pressures, and while Joe isn't a bad player, he's just not what the Bucs envisioned when they made this selection nearly 3 years ago. There are far worse picks you can make in the first round, and the reality is if you had this production in the 3rd round, you'd be thrilled. I would be extremely surprised if Tampa picks up his 5th-year option, and I think he will be 4 years and out as a former first-round pick, a C grade. The Ravens had 2 first-round picks in a span of 5 picks due to trading former tackle Orlando Brown Jr. to the Chiefs in a pick swap, and the Ravens spent their 2nd first-round pick of the night on pass rusher Odafe Oweh. In 3 years, Oweh has 2 5-sack seasons and has multiple years with at least 2 forced fumbles. Ravens fans, of course, remember the forced fumble by Oweh in his rookie year against the Chiefs, in which he also recovered to secure a win over the Chiefs in what was a very thrilling game. Oweh has similar production to Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and the production Oweh has provided in 3 years, like with Joe, isn't great, but it's not bad either. He also missed some time in 2023, yet recorded 50-plus pressures and showed legitimate flashes. We say on the channel a lot that pass rush takes a few years to develop, and I think Oweh is a classic case of this. Despite the similar production, I don't think Oweh has hit a ceiling yet, and I like his outlook a lot in 2024. Ravens fans also know that they have a classic case of pass rushers breaking out in contract years, and I think Oweh will have 10-plus sacks in 2024. The flashes were there this past year for him to have a big 2024, and I think he will. But for now, this is a C+ grade. Greg Rousseau was the first of 3 consecutive pass rushers taken and has gradually improved throughout his time in Buffalo. Greg has just 17 career sacks, but you can see on tape how he's improved over the past few years, and when Greg was a prospect, I kind of expected him to use his rookie year as a true developmental year and a year to adjust to the NFL, which he did. He opted out of the 2020 season during his final year at Miami, so he went a full year without playing a game and went straight into the NFL at 21 years old, so there was expected to be an adjustment period. He will play the 2024 season at just 24 years old, and I would be shocked if Buffalo doesn't pick up his 5th-year option. I really liked the idea of a duo between Vaughn and Greg when Vaughn came over in free agency, but unfortunately things don't always work out the way they are initially planned. Like we said with Odafe, I think Greg will have a big breakout year in 2024 because all the signs are there for him. He had 6 games with 5 or more pressures in 2023, and generally speaking, with how the game flow is with Buffalo, there's not going to be many games where the Bills are down by 21 points, and Greg won't have the opportunity to do what he was drafted to do, which of course is get after the quarterback. For now, a B- grade. Packers corner Eric Stokes had a really solid rookie year, all things considered. Transitioning from college to the NFL at corner is insanely difficult, and I commend Eric on the year he had back in 2021. But 2 years later, that remains his best year, and it's not close. He missed 8 games in 2022, and he only played 3 games in 2023, so we are looking at grading a pick that's only played 12 games in the past 2 years. The best ability is, of course, availability, but what really stinks for Eric is when he played in 2023, opposing receivers got theirs when they were on him. Per PFF, he was credited with an opposing passer rating of 152.9 in 2023, and that was on just 10 targets. There's a reason in nearly every mock you see that Green Bay is targeting a corner in the first round, and it's due in some part to both trading Russell Douglas and Eric Stokes not panning out the way they thought he would. Can he bounce back and will he bounce back are two different things, and I think Stokes' time in Green Bay is limited. This is a pretty tricky pick to grade because a lot of things that have happened that aren't exactly Eric's fault. I am rooting for him to turn his career around, but for now this grade is a C-. Peyton Turner was a physical specimen as a prospect, as he ranked in the 75th percentile or better in a lot of measurements in the pre-draft process, such as wingspan, arm length, three-cone drill, and the vertical. Unfortunately, that didn't translate to the NFL level for Turner, and in 3 years, he's played in 15 games. Not 15 games each year, but 15 total. He was placed on injured reserve during his rookie year with a shoulder injury. He wasn't good in 2022, and after week 1 of the 2023 season, he suffered a turf toe injury and came back in week 18 for a game against the Falcons, in which he logged 18 total snaps. Lifetime, he has played just 340 career snaps, and needless to say, this was not what the Saints were envisioning when they selected him in the first round back in 2021. Like with Tryon Shoyinka, I liked the situation Turner was entering as a rookie and thought if he could technically refine his game that he would become a key contributor and be a good number 2 pass rusher behind the future Hall of Famer Cam Jordan. But when you have 29 career tackles in 3 years as a former first round pick, the grade is pretty clear. They whiffed, and this is an F. Rashod Bateman was a prospect I loved coming out of Minnesota, and I thought he would be a great fit with MVP winning quarterback Lamar Jackson and be a good receiver for Baltimore. I love the situation he was entering too, as defenses not only have to account for Lamar every play, but Mark Andrews too. What Zay Flowers was for the Ravens in 2023 from a production standpoint was what I thought Bateman could have been all 3 years had he and Lamar stayed healthy. I really thought this was going to be a player that they could rely on when it came hell or high water, and if they have a gotta-have-it play on 3rd and 8, that Bateman or Andrews would both be viable options. But here we are 3 years later, and Rashod has 93 career receptions for 1,167 yards and just 4 touchdowns. I think what's most frustrating about this pick is there's times where you still see the flashes on tape of what there was when he came out of Minnesota, but it's not consistent enough, and there was a reason the Ravens drafted another receiver in the first round last year. Not only that, but Bateman has unfortunately missed a lot of time due to injury over his 3-year career. I still think the tools are there for him to have a good season at some point, but for now this is a D+. Greg Newsome, the corner from Northwestern, was a very good prospect, and I like this pick a lot when it was made. The idea of having him and Denzel Ward on the same roster was great, and Greg has played pretty well throughout his first 3 years. Just calling it what it is. Yes, Greg, like every other corner, has been at times throughout his career, and with how many talented receivers there are in today's era, cooked. It's going to happen no matter who the corner is. So yes, there are times where Greg and everyone shows up on another player's highlight reel, but Newsome had a career-low opposing passer rating when targeted in 2023, and also snagged the first 2 interceptions of his career. Interceptions can be a misleading stat, and if it came down to a corner playing good coverage and only snagging 1 or 2 interceptions per year, versus getting targeted 9 or 10 times per game and pulling down 5 or 6 interceptions per year, most coaches would take the first of the 2. Greg is a very good nickel corner, and there are a lot of teams that wish they had a Greg Newsome on their roster, period. I don't think Newsome is an elite top 2 or 3 corner in the NFL, but I think he was a very good pick near the end of the first round, an A- grade. Travis Etienne was the second of back-to-back running backs taken, and Etienne missed the entire 2021 season due to a Liz Frank injury. There was a lot of anticipation entering Etienne's second season, and it was always going to be interesting to see how Trevor and Travis, who of course were teammates at Clemson, would do in the NFL under a competent coaching staff. We will get to Trevor in a later video, but since Travis has been healthy, all he's done in his first 2 years is have back-to-back 1,400 plus total yard years and rush for over 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. I know a lot of people play fantasy football, and during the 2023 season, it seemed like Travis scored every single week. And during the 23 season, he actually had 3 straight games with 2 touchdowns, and this was during the stretch where Jacksonville was 8-3 and were the number 1 seed at one point in time. For Jags fans' sake, we won't mention anything else past that, but Travis has played well and he is a very good, not just running back, but offensive weapon too. I think he's a tad underappreciated, which kind of happens in Jacksonville, and a franchise legend in Fred Taylor can relate to that, but 3 years later this selection was a very good pick, and the Jags hit on Etienne, an A grade. Najee Harris was the first running back taken off the board, and he has had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons to start his career. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows, and there has been frustration within the Steelers fan base at times, especially with the emergence of Jaylen Warren. However, Najee is the first running back in Steelers history to have over 1,000 yards in each of their first 3 years. Is Najee the best running back in the NFL? No, but I think he's a good player, and he had a much better end of the 2023 season than you may think. Najee actually had over 700 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns in the final 10 games of the 23 season, and we often heard about how bad previous offensive coordinator Matt Canada was, and he was bad, yes, but that was usually attributed to Kenny Pickett's development, and Najee wasn't included a lot in these discussions. He was mentioned occasionally, but I think Najee will be looking at his 4th straight 1,000-yard year in 2024, and that's what the Steelers were hoping for when they made this pick. I think him and Jaylen Warren are a good duo, and Najee hasn't accidentally walked into 4,100 total yards and 28 touchdowns in 3 years. I think he is a tad underappreciated, and this is an A. Christian Dareus was the Vikings' first-round pick after trading back with the Jets so they could go up and get Elijah Vera Tucker. Dareus showed a lot of potential as a rookie and has played really good football over the last 2 years. Vikings fans know how not having a left tackle can really affect your team, and Dareus for most of his career has been a good player, and a lot of the time makes you forget he's there because he's playing at such a high level. The one thing that works against Dareus from a national media perspective is playing in the NFC along with a pretty good left tackle by the name of Trent Williams. Dareus is good, but Trent has been better, and when Pro Bowls and All-Pros are limited at your position, well, it's going to be tough for Christian to rack up the accolades. I think this is a classic case of a player that's playing at a Pro Bowl level, but we haven't seen the national recognition quite yet. Yes, there's times where he gets beat, like everyone, but he will soon get paid and will probably be the highest paid tackle in football for a short period of time. Him and Brian O'Neill are a damn good tackle duo, and I think Christian can get better, but for now this is an A grade. Caleb Farley had a tough go as a former first-round pick. There were a lot of concerns over him as a prospect due to injuries, and he was a high-risk, high-reward type of player. He was an extremely talented prospect, but unfortunately injuries followed him into the pros, and he never had the chance to become the player he was drafted to be. He tore his ACL in just week 6 of his rookie year after playing in just 3 games, and in 2022 he suffered a herniated disc. He played in 9 games in 2022, and he never saw the field as he started the year on the PUP list. This is in 2023 now, and he also had a tragic event in his personal life, which you can Google if you'd like, but Caleb has had a rough couple of years, and that's an extreme understatement, truly. I wish him the best moving forward, and I don't know what Caleb's future holds as an NFL player, as he's been through a lot both physically and mentally over the past few years. As unfortunate as this is from a football standpoint, he's played in just 12 games, and this grade is an F. Kwity Paye is up, and I liked Kwity a lot coming out of Michigan, and there needs to be some context around this pick. Kwity is a player that will be in the NFL for a long time, period. He brings a lot of value as a player and is a very good run-stuffing edge. Having said that, you can very easily counter and say you don't spend the 21st overall pick on a run-stuffing edge for a guy who's never had 40 pressures in a year. You, in fact, spend a first-round pick on a guy who will generate 10 or 12 sacks and a guy who can consistently get after the quarterback. I like Kwity a lot for what he is as a player, and he has improved the longer he's been an NFL player. But I also think it's fair to say he's not a home run of a pick either. There is an old saying that a third of first-round picks are busts, a third are stars, and a third are somewhere in the middle, and I think Kwity is in the middle. He's not a star, but if he stays in Indy for the remainder of his career, I wouldn't be surprised if they have a 10-year starter that winds up with 50 or 60 sacks and is a constant disruptor in the run game. He's a solid player, and we give this pick a B. Cadarius Tony was the Giants' first-round pick, and Cadarius was traded to the Chiefs midway through the 2022 season for a 3rd and 6th round pick. To date, Tony has just 760 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns in 3 years, though he is a 2-time Super Bowl champion. Cadarius was in the news in the middle of the 2023 season due to lining up offsides in a game against Buffalo and a game Kansas City would lose. But for Tony's career as a Giant, it was disappointing to say the least. This is a big-time callback, but he did have one good game in his rookie year against the Cowboys, as he had a career-high 189 receiving yards, and I thought after that game he could be a decent option for them moving forward, especially considering Kenny Golladay would lead the team in receiving yards that year. Those 189 yards actually account for 24.8% of his career yards in 3 years, and Tony had every opportunity to be a good NFL receiver. Both teams he's played for have not had good receiving cores, and he was a healthy scratch throughout the Chiefs' back-to-back Super Bowl run. He had just 420 yards for the Giants in 12 games, along with 0 receiving touchdowns, and this grade is an F. Linebacker Jamon Davis is an easy pick to forget about due to the Commanders not being a great team over the past few years. However, Davis has been a good contributor for Washington and to date has 269 career tackles along with 7 sacks. He only played 13 games in 2023 and absolutely would have had his second straight 100 total tackle season, but unfortunately missed the final part of the 2023 season due to a shoulder injury. It's easy to look at the premier players in this class if you're a Washington fan and be annoyed that Jamon is not one of the best players from this class, and I get it. But Jamon hasn't been a terrible player in his 3 years with the team either. Not only that, but he was a freak athletically during the pre-draft process, and I also don't think Washington has let him play to its strengths as much as they could have, and I think that has factored into the frustration with him too. He tested in the 95th percentile or better in the 40, the vertical leap, his 10-yard split, and is very tall for a linebacker. Like we mentioned with a few other players, I think this is an example of a player you would be thrilled with in the second round, but are kind of underwhelmed at 19 overall, a C grade. Jaylen Phillips was a prospect I loved coming out of Miami, and he is a very good player for the Dolphins. He showed a lot of flashes during his rookie year as he had 8.5 sacks and 16 quarterback hits. He would go on to finish in the top 10 in pressures in 2022 despite having his sack total drop from 8.5 to 7. He was on his way to another good season in 2023, and had he played all 17 games, I think we would have not only seen Jaylen's first 10-sack season, but perhaps his first 12-sack season too. If you followed the channel for a while, then you know how much I like this guy, and we obviously wish him the best in his recovery moving forward, as Jaylen unfortunately tore his Achilles on Black Friday in a game against the Jets. I hope he doesn't miss too much of the 2024 season, as him and teammate Bradley Chubb suffered brutal season-ending injuries late in the year, but I think Jaylen will be a Dolphin for a long time. I really think Jaylen has the potential to be a 12-plus sack player every year, but unfortunately we haven't seen it yet. He will play the 2024 season at just 25 years old, so there is plenty of time for him to become that guy, but for now this is an A- grade. Alex Leatherwood was the Raiders' first-round pick, and I was not a fan of this selection from the beginning, as I thought Christian Darrisaw was a better prospect, and I thought Leatherwood was a mid-second-round pick. I thought Leatherwood could start in the NFL for a few years, but the play from him in his rookie season wasn't just bad, it was downright awful. To put into perspective of how bad it was, he allowed 65 pressures in his rookie year, committed 14 penalties, and allowed 8 sacks. He was unplayable, and it was to the point where the Raiders were shopping him around before the 2022 season began, and they couldn't get a team to offer even a 7th-round pick for him. Normally, you see teams offer a 6th, and they'll get a player and a 7th in return, and we've seen this before with other first-round players that didn't live up to expectations, but the Raiders flat-out released him before the 2022 season began. The Raiders had a very bad span of first-round picks, and Leatherwood was certainly one of the worst during this stretch. He's not on an NFL roster anymore, and that says a lot about the player he was at the NFL level. This is an easy F grade. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 28% of people watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Also, please scan the QR code, as that also helps the channel, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.